Teenage angst and vampires. What a combination. Richelle Mead has it nailed. Her latest is The Indigo Spell, and it's coming up next on Well Read.
Well Read is made possible in part by the generous support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Terry Tazioli. Thank you for being here with us. International best-selling author Richelle Mead writes so much I'm not sure she has another life. Her book jacket bio is one of the funniest I've ever read. And you want to talk about teenagers and vampires? She is the source. And here she is in human form, I hope. Richelle Mead. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come down.
Actually, it's nice to have you here. You are human.
Yes, so I hear.
Yeah. But there are lots of different kinds of folks in your books, from vampires, and there are a couple sorts of those at least, and human beings and witches and warriors and the whole, you've got it all.
There's a whole range of them. Sometimes it's hard keeping track the bigger the cast gets.
This book, which is The Indigo Spell, is the latest. It's the newest one at the start of 2013, if you will. But it's not the first, and it's the third in this series, is that right, of Bloodlines? And there was a series before this, and the characters are appearing, and some have grown up, and some have become more prominent in Bloodlines, right?
Right. Bloodlines is the spin-off to Vampire Academy, which was my first young adult series. And so that was a six book series dealing with the same world of vampires and whatnot. And so when that concluded, with book 6, I wanted to keep on in the same world, but I wanted to do a different direction. You know, you're always, as a writer, trying to do new things and expand. And so I picked some side characters, moved them up to the front, and that's where this series came from. So this is the third in Bloodlines, but in a way it's kind of the ninth in the whole saga.
In the saga.
Yeah.
So, you know, we could probably go on for hours talking a little bit about what this book is and its position in the line. But can you give folks who don't know or haven't read this yet, I can't believe nobody has, a bit of a capsule of what happens with Indigo Spell and as it ties into all the others? That's a big order, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and yeah, it's very hard to be succinct sometimes.
I know.
The whole concept of the world in both series is based on these Romanian myths that there's actually two races of vampires in the world. They're actually good, friendly ones that they were okay with, and also the evil undead ones that are kind of what we think of in our culture as vampires. And so I just kind of created this whole war and dynamic and political system for them. And Vampire Academy started off following a girl who was half vampire and half human, and sort of her adventures in this world. And Bloodlines, which is the spin-off, follows a human girl who works for this, it's kind of a secret society. I joke that they're the Men in Black of the supernatural world, because they think humanity's better off not knowing any of these things exist. And so her job is to just sort of sweep vampires under the rug. If they make the media cover it up, don't let people know, because they'll be tainted. They just shouldn't have anything to do with this. And so that's where the series opens up. She's kind of just doing this work, and what begins to unfold is she not only becomes friends with these creatures that her society thinks are so dark and twisted, she actually starts to sort of get a romantic entanglement with one of them. And so between that and just some other fallout as she begins to learn what she's been told isn't true, that's where the series goes.
Well, in that group, the alchemists,
yes,
right,
yes,
may not even be, well, I think you say that, who we think they are, or who she thinks they are at the beginning of the book, and off we go. We go from there.
Exactly.
So this one, and I bet the others, I haven't read them, but I have to tell you, I ordered another one because I want to see what happened to some of these, or what had preceded this. You deal with a couple wild things here. One is teenage angst, which cannot be easy to write about, and the other one is vampires, which some people believe in and some people don't. How do you nail this stuff? Because you really got it.
You know, I don't know. And people ask about the teenage aspect of it. I used to be a teacher, and so everyone wants to know, oh, did you draw on that? And I do a little, but honestly, I think the way these work is just to not talk down to teenagers. I think it's an error of ours as adults that we assume they don't necessarily feel the same things we do, and certainly they express it, and I think it's bigger for them certain emotions than us. But otherwise, you know, I try to write this in an adult way, the same heartache, the same angst, if you will, and not try to sugarcoat it or anything. And I think that's what speaks to them. I think they're savvier than we give them credit for. And my readers, which I do actually have all ages, but the teenagers, I mean, they relate to it and they get it, and I think they feel it just as much as us.
So let's start with the vampires. Where did they come from in your life? When did they start creeping in there?
Oh, you know, I grew up just eating up fantasy and sci-fi. I had older brothers. I was 10 years younger than them, and so I was always dragged along, you know, to Star Wars and Flash Gordon and all this stuff. So I just grew up loving that stuff anyways, and that was all I read as a teenager. And so when the time came and I started writing my books, I just kind of fell into the whole fantasy genre. And I have two adult series, well, actually a third coming out this year, but two before I wrote Vampire Academy, which dealt with demons and fairies and, you know, more of this vein. And I was trying to think, you know, what haven't I done? What can I do for a young adult series? And since I hadn't done vampires, that was kind of where I started looking. And this was right before the Twilight phenomena kind of exploded. So, you know, I thought in my ignorance, oh, nobody's doing this, you know, little knowing what I was stumbling into.
Sure.
Not sure I would have if I had known. But anyways, having a sort of background in mythology and folklore, I went digging around, and that was where I found these Romanian stories that I ended up building the world around. And so from there, you know, I took the supernatural backdrop and tried to put human experiences in them.
That's what strikes me about these that didn't or doesn't for some others in the genre. That there's a lot of history here. I mean, there's a lot of research that has gone into the vampires and who they are and how they behave, and there's a lot of lore that pops up here that doesn't necessarily in others. Yeah,
I mean, and a lot of it is embellished and sort of built upon by me, but I did try to ground it in what I could find. My background is in religion and myth. I have a master's in comparative religion, and my undergrad work especially was very heavy in myth. I actually took a class at the University of Michigan called Eastern European Myth and Folklore, which had a huge just section on vampires, sort of tearing apart the whole concept of duality and, you know, a lot of things like that. And so it was kind of pieces of all of that I drew into this. And I'm not necessarily trying to give a history lesson, but I think it's neat if you sort of call back to something real and cultural.
Absolutely. And I have to tell you, there have been writers who have sat across the table from me here on this very program who even the word website is chilling to them because some of them don't have one. I started to look at yours, and I had to laugh, and I'm just laughing in a good way. Richelle, Mead, you are all over the place. There's like this website that has more information on it than I've seen in a long time from an author. There's an app, right?
Yes,
there's
there is
a blog,
an app.
and the blog especially. I started to read the blog just before a few days before we actually get to meet here, and I'm thinking, how do you find the time to do this? You have a lot of books. You have another one, I'm sure. Well, you do, because in 2013, the fall, comes the next in the series of Bloodlines, right?
There's one more this summer, too, in a new series.
Really?
Yes.
So you're also, I have to tell you, this one part of the blog, you referred to a portion of the book, and Sydney, who is the human and that works for the alchemist, has an outfit that you're talking about, and what you learned from her. And I'm thinking, how do you do this? How do you have a life? You must be writing all the time.
Mostly, I try to stick to daytime hours. I try to treat it like a job, especially now that I'm a mother. When I was younger, I could do the whole, working until 5 a.m. kind of things. But having a child put you on a normal schedule for all this, it's 8 to 5. stuff.
That's great.
Just time management, that's key.
Yeah.
You can't do the writer's dream of lounging and waiting for the muse while you eat bonbons and things like that.
So you don't write in your pajamas, right?
Oh, I do write in my pajamas.
You do? Okay,
yes.
fine.
So yes, it was actually a big deal for me to change out of them to come here. But no, I mean, I get up in the morning, get the coffee, and I spend about half the day at my computer doing that work before I go and become a person. So.
Well, I want to go back a little bit to the vampires, and they're just. And you said this in a way. There is so much out there. In terms of vampires and, if you will, the paranormal, et cetera, for not just young adults, but adults too. What's driving that? What do you think is driving that?
Yeah, I get asked this so much, and I don't know. I think there are a lot of people who do just love the genre like I do. They love fantasy, they love sci-fi. I think this current trend of not just high fantasy like Tolkien kind of things, but grounding it in our world, I think it's made it more accessible to a lot of people who beforehand would never have touched a fantasy book, because it's, they recognize things. Oh, I know that city, I know that place, I know that pop culture reference, and suddenly I think fantasy isn't quite as scary to people as it used to be, so you're growing your audience that way. A lot of these young adult books are also being opened to double ages. It's not teens reading them, adults are too, so you're getting a larger market. And I think the other thing is that there's so many of them are so good, and the stories and the characters are just, it's what drives any book. It could be paranormal or otherwise. I think you're just getting these experiences and these people that readers just love, and that's what makes them so loyal and hungry for more.
And how do you keep your stories fresh, if you will?
I just kind of write what feels right. I try not to overthink it. I think you'll drive yourself crazy if you look at what's out there and you try to be too like it or too different. I just kind of focus on my own world, think about the characters. I plan these series in advance so that I know where my last book's going to be. I want to be able to seed that along the way and build it correctly. So that helps a lot, because I know what my end goal is, and so I'm constantly kind of thinking about the best way to develop that.
That's a little different from some authors who will tell you, well, I don't even know where my characters are going to take me. They just start to write, and pretty soon, by the end of the book, well, hey, I have a story, and my characters took me there. Do they do that to you? It sounds like to me that you're, by saying you kind of know where you're going, you're doing a bit of plotting before you start.
Yes, and there's two sides of that in writing. They call it the plotters and the pantsers, writing by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
In both methods work. Everyone does their thing. I know a lot of people who plot like I do, but I also know a lot of people. It's amazing. They sit down and magic comes out of their fingertips, and they write great things too. So it's just a personal kind of preference. But I'm definitely someone who has to plan, and I've never had those moments that the authors will talk about where they say, "Oh, my characters told me to do this." I'm in control of them. We don't have those that kind of rebellion going on over in my office.
That's what I was wondering, if they ever say, "I don't want to do that."
No, they fall in line. Yeah.
Well, there are. Just thought of that's probably a good thing, because someone might bite you, and there goes the series.
Yeah.
What about well, actually, the women are very strong characters in these books. Sydney is, and the other women that you bring up. She has a mentor, if you will, who's a witch, and who wants her. I shouldn't give away more of the story. I won't. Women play a very, very powerful role, and have through these series.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And in Vampire Academy, the heroine of that, Rose was a very, very big favorite out there. And part of it, I'm writing about women because I have experience with that, obviously. But a lot of people ask, why did you decide to do strong women? And it's such an odd question for me, because it's hard for me to imagine sitting down and saying, I'm going to write a weak woman. Maybe that's where it ends.
Or not at all.
Yeah.
Or it's
So to me, it was just a no-brainer. Of course, they're strong. I grew up reading books like that. People often ask us, this is this new era we're in of strong women. But I grew up reading, like Island of the Blue Dolphins, you know, the girl in the wilderness having to survive, things like that. And maybe it wasn't the sort of kick-ass heroine we have so much of today, but these were still women that were in control of themselves and had to fight for themselves. And so that's what I'm putting in here. Rose in the first series was very much a physical kind of character. You know, she was trained as a warrior, so she is the one in the thick of battle. And the whole thing here with Sydney is trying to show what I think is a more realistic view for young women, which is strength through the mind. She actually does take some self-defense classes, so she learns to throw a punch. But her big thing is her wits. And that was something I wanted to show to fans of Rose, that, you know, hey, you don't have to be this unstoppable physical force to still be reckoned with in the world.
I think that's great. I was saying early on the show in the intro that the book jacket, the bio of you, is one of the best I've read in a long time. It includes things like you're a big fan of really bad reality TV. What's your favorite bad reality TV show?
Bad reality. I guess a really bad one is Hell's Kitchen, because that one kind of just degenerates into arguments. My favorite is Project Runway, which I like to think is highbrow reality TV, but maybe I'm being optimistic. I think there's something nice about unscripted TV when you work with plots all day, just to let the mind take a break.
I was just going to ask you if that's kind of your chocolate break.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
You know, when I watch dramas or something, I'll find myself analyzing the plot, or, you know, saying, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. With reality TV, you just kind of, you turn off and you watch humanity go. So it's fun.
Well, I can't even imagine you have time to do this, but what else do you read these days?
I do very little reading, much to my chagrin, because I used to be just a huge reader. And when I do, it's out of my own genre. I do not want to read about vampires or the paranormal, so I read a lot of historicals with no magic whatsoever. Things like that, just something else for my brain.
That's great. And tell me if what of you appears in the series? And I know it's true of almost probably every author, that part of who you are and what you know is there. But have you ever been able to figure out, I'm here, or that's me, or nothing?
No, sometimes. I mean, there's no character that's like me transplanted in the book. I know some writers do that. I think it's more of a fragmented thing. You know, I've put pieces of me all over the place in these characters. And so I'll see quirks of mine pop up once in a while. You know, and sometimes maybe it's just a belief. It could be something stronger like that. Other times it'll just be a quirk, and I'll give you a lighthearted example. I think it's in the predecessor to this, The Golden Lily. Sydney gets upset over someone messing with the controls in her car while she's driving, and that's my pet peeve. You know, it's a minor thing, but maybe you saw that on the blog.
I saw that. I saw it on the blog. That's right.
Yeah, with my post. I mean, it's just a small thing. I don't know why people do that when I'm driving, but you know, you put that in, and it's little, just pieces like that. I think that add flavor to the characters. But like I said, they're not me, and they have a million other traits that are just sort of things I can see for the book that we don't share. So, you know, I am them and I'm not them. You know, it's hard to say where an author goes into that book.
So, do you like being human, or would you like to be a vampire? Do you ever have those moments?
No, I have no interest in that. I am so happy being human. You know, people ask, what? You know, would you live in your world? Would you want to be these? And I think, oh, no, they have a rough time.
They do have a rough time.
They do. So.
Well, I'm glad you're human, and I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
And we're all done, at least for the two of us. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And best of luck.
All right.
This is great.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you all, too. Stay with us. Marianne Gwynn is up next. We're going to talk more books. We will see you in just a minute. Welcome back, everybody. We have, as always, a lot more to talk about. And we talk about that with Marianne Gwynn, who I don't think is a vampire. You're not a vampire, are you?
You know, I can't be sure.
I'm leaving. I'll see y'all later.
Is the moon full tonight? No, wait a minute. That's something else.
That's something else.
I wanted to talk for a minute about Richelle Mead. I heard about her a few years ago. And I'm like, okay, vampire books, teenagers. I went to one of her readings out in a bookstore in a suburban mall. There were people waiting to get in an hour and a half before the reading started.
I believe it.
Mostly teenage girls, but not all.
Yeah.
Fair number of adults just devoted to her. And I thought, what's going on here? And so I went and I called up a children's librarian and I said, what do you think of these books? And she said, I really like them. She said, unlike the heroine of a certain other series about vampires, who is always waiting to be rescued by
Placed
somebody.
in a, I don't know, a corner of the United States.
Yeah, somewhere. Richelle Mead's heroines are very assertive and are more likely to kickbox their way out of trouble.
Yeah, don't do that to me.
Right, right. I won't, but I've made my point, haven't I?
Yes, you have.
So I thought I would talk a little bit about feisty heroines and where they have come from.
Okay.
And the first feisty heroine I want to mention is somebody who started out in a TV series. All these books owe a debt to Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
There you go.
Yeah.
I knew you weren't going to say, what's her name, who spins around and becomes that American hero. So it's, yeah, Buffy's
No,
good.
and I read that Joss Whedon, who created Buffy the Vampire Slayer, said that he got really tired of watching horror movies where the cute blonde girl always gets chased down the alley and then gets devoured by a monster.
Yeah.
And that's on a good day.
That's on a good day.
And so he created this character, Buffy, who was a cheerleader in Southern California, and who learns that she is the one girl of her generation chosen to stop the spread of evil by vampires. And from there on, you know, Buffy just covered all kinds of things, you know, identity crises, social anxieties, and poor Buffy.
Boyfriends and boyfriends. And,
Buffy and her boyfriend, who was the redeemed vampire angel, they finally consummate their love, whereupon a gypsy curse renders him suddenly cruel and hateful. I mean, who hasn't had that happen to him?
It happens, well, it's happened to me several times in my life, but I think that's another show and probably another genre. Am I right? Am I right?
Okay. So I want to go back to one of the very first vampire novels, and that is Dracula by Bram Stoker.
Bram Stoker.
Do you remember that?
Yes, and this Dracula was really creepy.
It is.
I mean, he was totally creepy looking, too.
He was creepy looking, and it is a very creepy book. I went back and I reread it a couple of years ago, and I was amazed at how creeped out I was. But what people...
I love that verb. We've just invented it.
Creeped out.
Creeped out.
That's a good all-purpose verb. People forget that there's a very feisty heroine in Dracula, and that is Mina Harker, who is the fiancée of Jonathan Harker, the unfortunate Englishman who gets trapped in the castle with Dracula.
Right.
Well, that is only the beginning. Of course, he becomes part of the effort to track Dracula down.
He does.
But Mina, what she doesn't go through, she nurses Jonathan back to health, sees her friend Lucy die from a Dracula attack, and then she is attacked multiple times by Dracula himself. So much so that she can sense telepathically where Dracula is.
Yeah.
And she becomes part of the successful effort to get him.
Rid the planet. I know.
Very creepy book.
It is. It is.
Okay, so that book was, I believe, published like in the late 19th century. I want to move forward into the 1930s to a great ghost story, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier.
I love that story.
Isn't that a great?
I love that story. Is that Manderley?
Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be one of the great opening lines of fiction.
Absolutely.
The heroine of Rebecca is never named. She narrates the story, and she tells about how she meets and falls in love with a rich man named Maxime de Winter. What a great name. They return to his ancestral estate, and there's the fun. The fun begins there because his first wife's ghost is still there.
Exactly.
But
and
not
so is, how can we ever forget Mrs.
Danvers. Who is completely twisted.
She is.
Who loves the first wife and wants to just do the second wife in. So the heroine has to pretty much pull out all the stops to battle the ghost, Mrs. Danvers, and remain loyal to her husband, who keeps changing his story about what really happened to Rebecca. This is one of those books where you really don't know who to trust until the very end. Great book.
It is.
Okay. another feisty heroine. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go forward to 1950 now.
This could be a category on Jeopardy.
It could be.
So let's do, this is feisty heroine for what? 100, 500?
Oh, at least.
Okay, 500.
Okay.
I'm not going to get it.
Lucy, the lion, the girl and the lion, the witch, and the wardrobe. C.S. Lewis's classic first book in the Narnia series. Now, C.S. Lewis was an Oxford professor, and he was a good friend of J.R.R. Tolkien. And I love Tolkien, but there weren't a lot of heroines of any kind in the Tolkien books,
No.
almost all male.
It was pretty much zip, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Lewis created a family of kids, 2 boys, 2 girls, and as you know, they fall down the wardrobe and into this frozen kingdom where the White Witch has laid waste to everything pretty much. And really, it's Lucy who saves the day because she's brave and she's pure of heart. And I have a little time left, and I want to pay tribute to Hermione Granger, the heroine of the Harry Potter books. She is a person
terrific.
that made it cool to be smart again for
Absolutely.
girls. We
Which
are
is
all
a
in
very,
her debt.
It's a very good thing.
Yes.
I'm in her debt too because I don't mind being smart either.
Well, good.
No, I'm known for my looks. So are you. Thank you all for being with us. It's always good to have you here for Mary Ann and for me. Keep reading because we have a lot of reading to do too. Stay well read. See you later. You can follow Well Read on Facebook and Twitter and visit our website at wellreadtv.com.